right, let's go ahead and get started. First, I want to thank all of our employees and customers for making us possible. You guys are an integral part, obviously, of making our world work. And then she's not in the room, but I want to thank my wife for supporting this for 25 years. What I'm going to talk about today is employee engagement. I'm going to share what engagement looks like, what makes up an engaging job, the one thing that managers who have high levels of engagement consistently do. I'm going to share some of the numbers behind engagement, why we want to do this. I'll share what engagement is not. And then for the major categories of engagement, I'm going to share a couple of example questions that employees would be asked. And then I'm going to share specific actionable things that can be done to up engagement in an organization or a team. When we talk about what engagement is, the biggest outcome is people are going to give extra discretionary effort in their jobs. They're going to do more than we could ask them to do. They're also going to say good things behind our back about our organization, and they're going to stay. When we have engaging jobs, what employees will say is, I'm able to use a broad range of my skills. They'll also say that there's continuous feedback and clear expectations around performance. In a little bit, I'm going to talk about Tiger Woods and what he focuses on. He focuses on the areas, this is back before all the scandal, what he focused on are the areas that he was the best in the world at. Engaging managers do the same thing. It does not make sense to be in the human change business. When we look at engagement, in an organization, we're going to be more profitable, more productive. People are going to be sick less, and they're going to be safer. And when we have end-to-end engagement, when we have employees that are engaged and customers that are engaged, we're going to outperform our competitive set by a factor of 2.5 times. What engagement is not? And when you see these best places to work, great places to work stories, they focus on this kind of stuff. Because the blocking and tackling that I'm going to be sharing with you, it isn't as fun as free beer on Friday. These things may exist in an organization that has engagement, but they do not drive engagement. They are the rounding errors of engagement. Engagement is also not an environment where we are all buddies and we never disagree. And for the things that I'm going to share with you about engagement, most of my ideas are free. A little bit about me, myself. I started this company 25 years ago. We've won dozens of awards for being a best place to work and a great place to work. And as I mentioned, what they're gauging there is engagement. This year, Fortune named us one of the top 30 places to work in tech in America. And there's a copy of my book on your way out to grab and have it with our compliments. Here are the major areas of engagement. Alignment with goals. Having people understand how they fit into the big picture. Teamwork and trust with coworkers. Having loyalty and knowing I can trust those around me. Having managers who are effective and having senior leaders who have a clue about where the organization is going. And then feeling valued and job satisfaction. And this is a big one. If I have a job that's mundane, if I have a manager that is a moron, and then Tom says, we're going to have free beer on Friday, you're going to say, that's not the problem around here. So we're going to talk about what makes up an engaging job. And then we'll finish with pay and benefits. Let's talk about alignment with goals. In these surveys, what they'll ask employees, and if you've taken them, this will look familiar to you, I understand the company's plan for success, which means as leaders, we've got a plan and we have communicated it. This next one is key. I understand how I fit into the big picture of the organization and how I move things forward. As it relates to mission and goals, if we cannot clearly articulate it, we cannot expect our employees to. So we need to define it, communicate it, and the big one that we usually miss is number 3 there, and that's relating the overall big picture back to an individual and how they are contributing. Culture really comes down to our values, and values should be points of difference. So if I had a pawn shop, honesty could be a point of difference. But in the space that we're in, if we said, Intertech, one of the values that we have is honesty, it wouldn't make sense because it's pretty much table stakes for the world that we're in. We've got 3 key values in our organization: attitude, commitment, and excellence. And I would bet dollars to donuts that for someone who's been with the firm for a month, if you ask them what are Intertech's values, they would be able to tell you. And they'd be able to tell you because we have baked it into our organization. We start looking for fit to values in interviews. We give a psychological profile where we benchmark candidates to our gold standard that we created by having our top employees take that assessment. We talk about our values in orientation. We have a program called ACE where people can recognize one another for going the extra mile. We talk about our values at our monthly all-company meetings, and then once a quarter, we recognize those people who have either been nominated or were a nominee. Then we also have yearly ACE awards. If we're looking to do something that's bigger, we can create a company-wide theme. Last year, we had a company-wide theme around mobile application development. You can gamify this and have individual and share rewards to get everybody headed in the same direction, and then give consistent updates and celebrate success. As it relates to teamwork and engagement, here are a couple of the questions that we could expect. Goals and accountabilities are clear, and the team effectively collaborates. A tool that we use here are Dale Carnegie key result areas. There are other competing things like traction, where they talk about quarterly rocks. At the end of the day, what we're trying to get to is having very clear expectations and objective measures of performance. We also use this tool to matrix organization goals down to the individual. And everyone in the organization, including me, has a yearly learning goal. The top key result area is the main driver of how somebody helps with the company's performance. So with a salesperson, it's sales. With a consultant, it's chargeable hours. By being crystal clear what we're expecting for, there are no surprises at review time. We are proactively talking about performance. This is something that I mentioned earlier. By the time that we are a working adult, science tells us that we are pretty much baked as people. And so if we think as leaders we're going to be in the people change business, we are making a mistake. Great managers focus on strengths, and this is what I mentioned about Tiger Woods. He was middle of the pack at his prime for chipping. He didn't try to get better. He focused on the things that he was the best in the world at, and that's what great managers will do. Here are a couple of great teamwork quotes. One is from Reagan. There's no limit to what you can do if people don't care who gets the credit. Also, Jack Stack, who's the author of The Great Game of Business, he said, pretty easy to stop one guy, pretty hard to stop 100. When it comes to building engagement, we start this in the hiring process. We do a team interview. We do 8 separate steps, team interviews near the end, and if the team says, don't hire this person, we listen. Because if we didn't, they would know we're just doing this to kind of make you feel like you have a stake in who joins our organization. All right, trustless coworkers. Here are a couple of example questions that we'd be asked in an engagement survey. One is, I have a close and trusting relationship with my coworkers, and I feel loyal to my immediate team or work group. Something that we've done is we've done a psychological profile with the leadership team that outlines how we like to be communicated with. I then had the team members go through, and I said, pick 3, 4, or 5 things that really are true about the way that you like to be talked to and worked with. Our CFO hates new projects on Monday, so Monday is not the day to talk to him. Ryan, who's one of my partners that oversees the consulting side of the business, if you tell him what to do, he will dig his heels in. If you ask for help, he will bend over backwards to make it so. To have trust, we have to have an environment where it is okay to be wrong. And as leaders, that starts with us by admitting mistakes. We have an environment of execution. Things from time to time are going to break. When we have a highly functioning team, we will have disagreement without questioning intent. We know each other well enough as people that if you have an opposing view, it isn't that I think you're trying to get some personal gain. I trust that that's not the case, that you're really arguing for the best idea for the organization. To have that level of trust means that I need to understand you as a person. If all I know about you is the professional role that you have, I don't have a clue about what you do outside of work. I don't know if you're married or single. I don't know if you have a family. If I don't understand you at a person level, it's pretty hard to trust you when stuff hits the fan. So the way that we can do that is create opportunities for people to get to know one another as people. What we've done is we've baked into our corporate calendar social events that allow us to get to know each other as people. We do things like have a party to celebrate wins. The first Friday of every month, we have a barbecue during the summer. Otherwise, we have pizza ordered in the winter. We celebrate employee anniversaries, and we include the family. We recognize things like birthdays and childbirth, and we don't want to be in the party planning business, so we tell our employees, here are the things that we're doing. If you want to do more, you're free to organize, and we'll cover some or all of the costs. We also use technology to be able to make it so that we can be connected even if we're not in the same building. I'm not going to read aloud, but we use Yammer, Slack, Skype for Business, Uber Conference, and Evernote Teams to allow us to collaborate if we're not physically in the same space. So, manager effectiveness and trust in senior leaders. Again, some of the questions that would be asked would be, my manager cares about my development, I respect him or her, and there's open and honest communication. When it comes to leadership, I think it's a word that gets used a lot, and people have different interpretations of what it's about. I see two big buckets. First, it's how we think. Earl Nightingale said, and he's a forefather of life planning, we become what we think about. Anytime there's a problem, if we say, this isn't fair, I can't believe this is happening again, we are headed down the wrong path. When we have a problem, we say, in what ways can we? And we go about listing out all the possible solutions, sorting them from first to worst, and executing. That sends a message to people. Adversity does not build character. When stuff's hitting the fan, how you behave as a leader is revealed. Solid leaders will take blame for mistakes. Jim Collins said in his book, Level 5 Leadership, that when good stuff happens, good leaders look out a window. They give credit away. When there are problems, they look in a mirror and they accept responsibility. And they create an environment where it's okay to make mistakes. In the audience for the first time was my mom, right? Yes.
Yes, I have a mother.
Yes, I do have a mother. She said my book burns really well. So if you need some kindling, it does. And I remember when I was in freshman year, J term, I was on the farm. That's where I was raised, about 30 miles west of the cities. And I was cutting wood, and I was revving the truck trying to pull this log out, and it just wasn't moving. And I revved it more, and I heard a pop and a spinning sound, and I had sheared the axle because the parking brake was on. And I thought Dad was going to kill me. So I walked back to the farm, and he said, if you do nothing, you'll make no mistakes. And we went right on to solving the problem. I think as a leader, if we set that example and that safety for our employees, it is an environment of execution where things get done. The second bucket are those things that we do as a leader, and this is from Dale Carnegie. As a leader, we need to plan goals and align individuals to those goals and hold them accountable. Solve problems, delegate, give praise correctly. When there's corrective feedback, specific in private, and we treat people with care. Giuliani wrote a book called Leadership. Shortly after 9/11, he said, weddings are optional, funerals are mandatory. So as a leader, for those people that are under us, we need to go out of our way when things in their world are not going well and support them. I talked about this before. There are spheres of job satisfaction, and if we're not getting the big ones right, the little ones don't matter. And so as a leader, we need to focus first on challenging and engaging work for our employees and being clear with them as a leader about what our expectations are and giving continual feedback. Once that's covered, the next sphere is how is this job going to help my career? And only when we get to the very, very outer circle is it really that I'm worried about what's happening up the food chain. It should make sense. If you're in a job that's horrible, with a manager that's a moron, it doesn't matter if you've got a genius or a CEO. Here are the major components of job satisfaction from the top down. Stimulating and challenging work. Now, we can't always have stimulating and challenging work, so what do? If there are tasks that are beneath people, we need to do three things. One, recognize it. Don't pretend that you've got this person who's an A player doing C-level work, that it's just normal. Time cap it. Say, I know this is beneath you, but by February 1st, we'll roll you off and have you do something else. And then ask, what are things in that interim period you can do to allow them to have some challenge? Is it learning or paying for a certification? I jumped ahead too quick. Clear expectations. As I mentioned, we use something called Dale Carnegie Key Result Areas. Continuous feedback, and this is very, very true with millennials. They want feedback almost by the minute. Unparalleled learning, clear paths, and an inclusive culture. When we look to make a job more than a job, as a leader, there are things that we can do to make it more than just the work and more than making money. At Intertech, a dozen years ago, we started the Intertech Foundation, where we give money to families who need financial assistance because they're at RMH in Minneapolis. Last year, we also launched a STEM scholarship, and our employees are involved with who we're giving what to. We also do volunteering events with families, and it gives us an opportunity, again, to get to know one another as people. Benefits and pay. When it comes to pay, our goal is to not be a demotivator. Jim Sipple, one of our board members who is here tonight, I was talking with him about this. It's really frustrating because when we look at these engagement survey results, we take a dip down on pay and benefits. And we look across any industry, that's true, that there's always a dip down in that area. And Jim said, Tom, I've been working for 40 years, and I've never been paid what I am worth. And so as a leader, we need to pay market plus a little and then give some variable pay based on things that they can control. When it comes to benefits, ask questions about what could we do or give that would not require extra money. 9 9-hour days, a work-from-home program, a sabbatical program are all things that we can do but don't require money. When it comes to feeling valued, here are a couple example questions that would be asked. The organization makes investments in me, training and development, and they see people as the most important aspect. On the back half of my talk here, there are some things that apply as much at home and other relationships as they do at work. Human flourishing, so we have a positive relationship with somebody, is defined by a ratio of 3 positive interactions to 1 negative interaction. So as a leader, we need to look to catch people doing things right. I'm going to talk about that last bullet point in a little bit. When we talk about giving praise, one of my first favorite things to do, let people relive the win. And it's simple. You just say, I heard this happen. How'd you do it? And then they tell the story of what they did. I'm a big believer in handwritten notes. Right, Mom?
Right.
You taught me well.
I know.
And the research shows us that having a handwritten note is twice as meaningful as a face-to-face conversation. And that face-to-face conversation is twice as meaningful as an email. And if you've received in your home a handwritten note from somebody in your organization versus just had an email fired to you, that just makes sense. When we give praise, there are 3 vital ingredients. 1, be specific. Don't just say good job, say what they did. The next one is one that we tend to miss. Acknowledge that they went out of their way. And then last, where you can, tie it back to you. So for example, thanks for landing the ABC account. I've always wanted to see that on our company's roster, and I know you went above and beyond to make it happen. Within our firm, I'm not going to read this aloud, but we make a big deal out of people's anniversaries. Let's talk about communication and feedback. We need to have an organization that's baked into it ways for our employees to give feedback to us. So something that we do here at Intertech, we have something called the Employee Town Hall. Partners are not present. Employees spend half a day in groups working through questions like the ones I'm listing here. Then one employee comes back to the leadership team and says, here are all the things that the employees see as issues or things that we could improve. Some of the great questions are start, stop, continue. Tell us one thing we should start doing, stop doing, continue doing. Tell us something that's a hassle for you, a hassle for our organization, or a hassle for our customers. Similar to interviewing, if we want to ask people for feedback on what we should be doing, we have a responsibility to do one of two things. Either we implement it, or we go to great lengths to explain why we cannot at this time. I have a series of some communication tips around touchy subjects. This study was done by Harrison Osborne. Over half of our communication is done through body language. And so if I have something that could be taken either way by you, I need to do that face to face. Something else that we need to keep in mind is email and texting is done in the tone of the reader, not the writer. And I think probably everybody in the room could point to an example where two people went at it, and it was because it was being misinterpreted. So discuss sensitive things face to face. This is backed by a social scientist that when we have bad news to communicate, science shows us if I give you two equally disagreeable choices, you're going to feel better about it than if I just said, this bad thing happened and this is what's going to be a result of it for you. So when we look at communicating bad news, we should look for options for that person that we're communicating it to. If we want support on something, it makes sense to ask for that support before we do it. In 87, a social scientist asked one group of people, are you going to vote? 100% say yes. The control group he doesn't talk to. On election day, those that said, yep, I'm going to vote, almost 87% voted versus 62. It's important to get people also to like you. Another social scientist does a study where surveys are sent out and people are asked to complete the survey and send it back. In one group, the person who's sending the survey has a name that's very similar to the recipient. In the control group, that isn't the case. Twice the amount of people completed the survey because my name is Tom and the survey came from a Tom. Or my name's Stalonik and the survey came from a Stalonik. So, getting people to like us is important. And this last one's a big one. We want to extend wins and cut losses. Science shows us, and if I ask you, we're going to go to Vegas and you're going to lose $10. You can lose $10 once. Waz, has that ever happened to you?
Oh, yeah.
Got a gambler in the house. If I said you can lose $10 once or $5 twice, what would you want? Most people would say, let me get the losing over. Losing does not feel good. If I flipped that and said you could win $5 twice or $10 once, most people would say winning feels good. So let me win $5 twice. What does that mean for us in terms of communication as a leader? It means that if there's some bad stuff to communicate, we need to say, let's have one uncomfortable conversation. Tell me everything I need to know about what's going on. Let's not have death by 1,000 cuts. If good stuff is happening, we can let it flow and stream as it happens. I have a buddy of mine that after he read my first book said, how do you implement this? There's so many things. And the simple answer is, a corporate calendar. So at the start of the year, our daily huddles, our one-on-one meetings, our all company meetings, as well as our social things and our town hall, they are all laid out. And with those systems in place, we really can relax in the process. I've been asked, of all the things in the book, The 100, what do I think is the most effective tool? And it would be the daily huddle. So at 5 o'clock, the leadership team, our phones ring. And we go around the horn and we talk about big updates, metrics, and stuck items. By proactively asking people for problems, we kill the monster when it is tiny. By having everyone on the line that needs to hear what's going on, we are never surprised, or very rarely surprised, by something that is occurring in the organization. Prior to our huddle, the leadership team has had a huddle with their direct reports. Prior to that huddle, some of those people have had a huddle with their direct reports. So every 24 hours, we have a rhythm where we know what's occurring across the organization. A couple final thoughts here on engagement. It's to close the loop. If you're in a position where you oversee people and they're participating in these best places to work, great places to work surveys, you can buy the anonymous results. And if you're not sure what to do, that third bullet point will help you. Just push it back to your people and say, you kind of scored low here. What ideas do you have for how we can improve? Questions on what I've covered? My mom's gone, so the prickly pear is out of the room. That's good. I asked that. When she acts up, yank her. She's been drinking quite a bit. It's a normal Wednesday for my mom. Any questions before I summarize?
Where, in your experience, what's kind of the one thing where you run into problems most often, where you kind of go off the rail?
As far as engaging employees?
Yeah.
I think, clear expectations about job performance. So that Dale Carnegie method I mentioned, or Traction has rocks, that there should never be a surprise when you do a formal, like we do a formal yearly review, and I tell people, in that review, you both should be nodding your heads, like, yep, we talked about that. Yep, we talked about that. Yep, we talked about that. Reviews are a horrible way to manage because you never can, should have. So having clear expectations and and focus on the future, that's a very important thing. Other questions?
Excuse me, I'm wondering how important education is to keeping your employees engaged, ongoing education.
Everyone in our organization has a learning goal, and I think when we look at those spheres of job satisfaction, career, and after we've addressed do we have good work and do we have a good manager, the next thing that people want is to be in an organization that's making investments in them to really make them more valuable within the organization and on the street. Yes?
It looks like you've got a system that is using setbacks and psychological counseling.
We're going to crack you like a nut. You apply here. We will.
That almost looks like you're cultivating a culture of people that are all kind of the same. How are you doing on diversity?
Well, the psychological assessment is looking for a fit to the kind of work that we do here, as well as how a person is wired. Does that make sense to you? That we're looking for people based on our top performers completing that gold standard that we have. We're looking for people that we know will be successful in our organization.
So if you had someone who doesn't do well on those, that have to be a surprise fit?
We have been wrong when we've overridden the profile. We're like, we got so much work, we're turning work away, hire that guy. Well, the assessment said he really has an issue with self-starting, with taking a task on. I don't care. We're losing money every day that we don't have a person on the team. When we've done that, we've been wrong more than right and fired the person. Now, it's just one element. We do have 8 steps that people go through. Those steps are separate and gated, so we don't bring in and do 3 steps in one. We'll do the first step, and then we'll see how you did. We hire about 1 out of every 20 technical people and on the sales side, it's about 1 out of every 35 or 40. So it's a lot of people in the funnel to get somebody who's going to be a fit. But when we get people that have a high commitment to our values and they're high performers, and we have a system like I've laid out here where we've built in how do we lay out expectations for performance, how do we communicate what we're doing, there really aren't a lot of surprises. Don't say anything, Neil. All right. With that, I'll wrap up. I will be around if you have any questions. So the big things that we want to do is, one, we want to align the employee to the overall plan. We want to build teamwork by creating opportunities for us to get to know one another as people. We want to have clear performance expectations. And remember, as I shared, in any relationship, flourishing is defined by 3 positive interactions to 1 negative interaction. It's imperative that we have jobs that are challenging and grow new skills. The goal with pay is just make it not be a demotivator. Identify benefits that you can do, and in your day-to-day, use those communication tips that I shared with you.